Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. We are, I hope everybody's enjoying the snow out there. I'm actually in upstate New York today, so avoided some of that. We and LawBank had talked about trying to provide a few tips for the year end and into the new year related to some of the accounting and bookkeeping and other practice management type activities that Watson provides to its clients. Watson is something that I started back in end of 2012, beginning of 2013, as basically a back office services company for law firms, providing billing and bookkeeping, paralegal and legal assistant services to primarily small law firms. Aubree can correct me, but I think our largest is around 10 lawyers or so.
Yeah.
But primarily, we're talking about the 1, 2, 3, 4 lawyer firms. So we support about 40 of those. And Aubree, as many of you know, really knows what she's talking about. She's the operations manager for Watson, keeps my practice in check. I've got a corporate transactional practice that I run through as a virtual client of LawBank, but really I'm up on the 8th floor of the 3900 East Mexico location, as is Watson. So thanks again for joining with us. I'm going to let Aubree start to talk about, as I said, some of the things that we do for our clients around this time of year for year end and looking into next year. Aubree?
Hi. Thanks everyone for joining. As Brian said, I think it's just crucial. A lot of the work we do is for smaller firms. A lot of the larger firms, they have their firm admin in place. They have, a CPA kind of looking at everything throughout the year. So we just wanted to go over some items that, again, not only help you to prepare for end of year, beginning of year for tax season, but then things to think about for the coming year, especially with COVID situations, things like that. Other things to think about, other planning. So we'll start with end of year items, and Brian might chime in on a few things, but things that we do for our clients to make sure that we're prepared, especially when the beginning of the year hits, things that we focus on and prepare for so that we're not totally slammed right at the beginning of the year. So that's number one, that end of year accounting, bookkeeping, kind of reviewing that. So we'll go over that first. Then number two, we'll go over just kind of New Year stuff, things to plan for 2021. And then we're happy to go over any questions you guys might have on things that we discuss. So end of year planning, again, it's pretty crucial. Right now is probably the best time to start planning for end of year, making sure everything's wrapped up and being prepared for taxes in 2021. So one of the first things that we really like to focus on is cleaning up any old accounts receivable you all may have on your books. So it's really crucial to go in, especially if you're using a billing software program, or if you're not, to go through and see what clients have outstanding balances. It's, as Brian mentioned here on the PowerPoint, we don't know what's going to happen with the election. We don't know what's going to happen with tax rates. So it's really important to try and collect on as many of those funds as possible this year. Taxes could go up next year. And so you want to try and collect as much money from that outstanding AR as possible. That kind of ties in with billing. I know a lot of you guys are small firms, so now is really the time to sit back, see what outstanding billable time you might have, get bills ran for that, and really look at that AR and see what clients may be feasible for you to collect on some of those sums that are outstanding.
You've got, for those, and I'm going to jump in, Aubree,
Yeah.
for those of you that have been practicing a while, you know this. For those that are newer, today is what, the 23rd, I think, or 26th rather. We've got this week and up to the week of Thanksgiving before things go into a black hole. Once you get to Thanksgiving and you move into December, the difficulty in getting things collected and getting people to pay attention to your bills goes down dramatically. So this is the time to get those bills in shape, get them out, start calling, make sure you get those collected, because if you try to do this too late in the year, a lot of times you're just not going to be able to get the client's attention, and it's, you know, for no other reason than you got a lot of things going on and people are distracted. So just a little additional experience tip there.
Yeah, with the holidays coming up, yes, it can be very difficult to get what you need, especially when it comes to those funds. So I truly think that one of the big things to focus on is that AR, collecting those funds, getting everything that you possibly need in 2020, so that when you go to do the taxes in 2021, you have everything you need on that. A lot of times, like Brian said, probably around this time of the year, it might be easier to do telephone calls to try and collect those remaining balances. So you're really getting someone on the phone. If you have a credit card processing system like a LawPay or anything through QuickBooks, sometimes it's just the easiest to get them on the phone and get payment at that time. If there are any really large balances, again, trying to get a settlement or just close those books out for that client is something to really focus on. The other major thing that you want to be prepared for is 1099s. 1099s have to be submitted to the IRS by January 31st. This is for any vendors that you have paid that fall under those 1099 requirements. So any vendor that you've paid over $600 to in a year. Any vendors that are a corporation, they need 1099s. And corporations don't necessarily always get them, but LLCs, other vendors will always receive those 1099s. Again, this kind of falls into the same timeline as the AR. As you get towards the end of the year, beginning of the year, vendors are cranking on their own processes to try and close their books for a year. It can be difficult to try and get their W-9s from them. So it's really crucial now to really see what vendors have you paid, what vendors fall under that 1099 requirement, and call and get that W-9 from them. Also, it tends to happen where if you're trying to order 1099 forms online or go to an actual Office Depot, Office Max, you can run into situations where they are running low on the actual 1099 forms. So now's the time to purchase those forms, or you can go onto the IRS website and they have those forms as well that you can order from them. But we've ran into the past where you run out of those forms and you kind of have to find a different system to try and get those together. So 1099s are huge because that is one of the first deadlines that you have to hit at the beginning of the year. So it's not just taxes, you've got to get those 1099s out the door so that those can get to the correct vendor so that they can then work on their process for taxes for 2020. So now's the time, again, if you're using a QuickBooks program or a different type of bookkeeping program, really running that vendor transaction list and seeing who falls under those requirements for 1099s. And we're always here to help you guys walk you through that. But the IRS has a great site as well that you can look up and see what are those requirements and if you have any vendors that fall underneath that. One of the other big things that we have run into this year is obviously the PPP forgiveness. It's been going back and forth for a while now on what that forgiveness looks like, when we have to submit applications, all of that. If you did receive PPP funds, they are saying that if you receive $50,000 or less, there's a pretty easy easy form that you have to fill out. We have heard that you have to file 10 months at the end of that covered period. A lot of our clients got those PPP funds around April. They changed it from an 8-week period to a 24-week period. So we have to fill out and complete those forms 10 months from the end of that period. We did do a CLE or a seminar on the PPP a few months ago. A lot of the banks will have these applications that you can fill out. So wherever you got the PPP funds from, you'll want to check with your bank and see what applications they have for you to fill out. It really is a pretty straightforward form. It's not too difficult, shouldn't take you too long. But that's something, again, as you're cranking through tax season, starting up a new year, now might be the time to just take a look at that form and get that filled out and get that submitted. So it's just one less thing to have to worry about as we go into a new year and try and get tax season completed. If you had payroll that's going on with the PPP, a lot of your payroll companies might already have the forms or the reports filled out for you. So sometimes it's beneficial to just check with your payroll company first, and they might have a lot of that information, so you're not having to go back and calculate that. Another big thing for end of year is your COLTAF balance. Obviously, COLTAF should be in balance throughout the whole year. Super crucial that that is always matching with your bookkeeping software to your bank. But at the end of the year, you know, another thing to pay attention to is to make sure that those COLTAF funds are reconciled with the bank. You have that exact amount. So just another account to pay attention to. Just like your operating account, your credit card accounts, anything like that, you'll want to make sure that everything has been reconciled. Again, that's something that if you're working with the CPA is going to want to see. They're going to want to see that all accounts are reconciled, everything is as up to date as possible. And again, waiting till towards the end of the year, holidays hit, things get crazy, you're trying to finish things for other clients. Now's the time to take a look at your bookkeeping, see where you're at with everything, make sure everything has been reconciled up to date so that when you do go to your CPA and they're ready to start moving on your 2020 taxes, all that information is completed for them. And the next point is, you know, having that CPA in place. So I'm sure that most of you guys have that, but it's crucial to make sure with that, you know, CPAs, they start getting busy now, but really, you know, next year. So you want to make sure that you have everything in place as possible to make their lives a little bit easier. So like I just said, making sure all accounts are reconciled, all bank activity for 2020 is up to date, ready to go. If you had any personal expenses, so if you used a personal account, a personal credit card for business expenses, it's really important that you have all of that together for your CPA. So it's going back through, sometimes just taking another quick look of, oh yeah, that was a personal charge on that credit card, or that was a business charge on a personal card. Having those receipts, knowing what it was for. We try and make sure that when we're working with CPAs that, again, all accounts are reconciled, everything's up to date. Here's all personal expenses, all business expenses that might have hit a personal card. We try and have that if there's a lot, you know, in an Excel spreadsheet, try and have those receipts together. And then any credit cards, other things like that, having all expenses together for the CPA, so that when you hand over that information to them for them to start working on the books for 2020, they have as much information as you have available. And then the questions are limited as well. You know, you're trying to make sure that the CPA isn't having to spend a ton of time reworking anything, that everything's pretty organized, in place, ready to go, so that their job is a lot easier. Again, they start their busy season right away in 2021. So anything you can do to make their lives easier so you can get those taxes filed as quickly as possible is going to be the best. So again, really, if you're using a QuickBooks program, making sure everything's ready there, making sure they have access to those programs so that they can log in and get any of that information. We're typically sending the CPA bank statements as of 12/31. So if you have bank statements, loan statements, if you have a car on the account, anything like that, I try and have everything in order, ready to go, really starting about now, so that when it hits in January, everything can be transferred over to them.
One other piece on that is, especially this past year and, all of the remote work that's been going on, don't forget that your internet service and your cell phone bills can be business expenses. I mean, that is how you've been connecting with your clients. And again, I defer to your CPA to talk about whether there's a percentage of that you guys are comfortable claiming as a business expense, but think about some of those other expenses that you are incurring that may be typically personal, but particularly this year have been utilized for the purposes of business. And don't forget to include those.
Yeah, that's a great point. That is kind of the final thing that I try and speak with the CPAs about is, and especially with this year, a lot of us were all working from home. What were those expenses and what can that, what can be added to that for end of year? So is home office expense allowed to be put in the taxes, telephone, internet, anything like that? Your CPA is going to be the one that can really say, yes, here's a percentage that you can claim on that, but it's a really great question to ask them. And the only other thing really for end of year, there's a couple things. Not only I made a big point when it comes to accounts receivable, but the other thing that we do for our clients is we really look at their vendor bills really in December, and we see, okay, what remaining bills can we pay this year that don't need to go into January 2021, that we can put those expenses in this year for taxes that can be claimed so that you can get those processed for payment. I kind of call it a cash flow, but you're really looking and estimating and saying, okay, what payments can I collect? What vendor bills can I pay? And I typically send that information to the CPA to see, should we be collecting more funds? Should we be paying vendor bills? I like the CPA to see, okay, as of November 1st, here is where our operating balance is at. Here's what I think we're going to collect by the end of the year. Here's the remaining expenses that I think we can pay by the end of the year, including personal expenses, and have them really kind of do an analysis for you and say, yes, we need to collect those funds, or no, but we really need to pay as many vendor bills as possible. And that's what I rely on the CPA for. Right around this time is when I start setting those end of year meetings to really get their perspective on it and what needs to be handled by the end of the year. And that really falls into if you guys have payroll, if you're doing distributions, 401k payments, it's really important that you're figuring that out now as well. Some of you guys might have employees that you have on payroll. You might just be doing payroll. Again, this is where I speak directly with the CPA to see, hey, is a bonus needed for one of my clients? Do we need to do bonuses for any employees? If you're doing an employee payment for 401k, that has to be paid by December 31st. So sometimes I have several clients that do employee payments that's coming from you, and then actually an employer portion paid as well. The employer portion can be paid when you actually file your taxes, so that can be done in 2021. But if you're doing an employee payment every month with your payroll, or if you're just doing one lump sum payment at the end of the year, that has to be done by December 31st. So I work with my clients and see where they're at, and again with the CPA, and see, is a bonus needed? What payments are there? What do we need to do for any employees that they have, and handling any 401k payments as well. Again, holidays hit after November, things can get crazy. That's where you have to be budgeting, seeing if you were making employee deferral payments for the 401k, that those funds are available, they're ready to go, you know where they need to be submitted. I can't tell you the number of times you can log onto a 401k site on December 31st and it doesn't work. So it's crucial to be prepared, overnight that check, whatever it may be, so that it's submitted and ready to go. So
One of
that's
the other,
kind.
yeah, I was going to say, jump in, and I didn't mean to cut you off for the end of your planning, but one thing that you and I had talked about that I didn't put in here and isn't really in the bookkeeping piece, but if you guys are thinking about doing holiday cards or something like that, this is also a critical moment for that, because the time working backwards from when you want those to actually hit people's mailboxes, you're right on top of the timing of having to get that process started right now.
Yeah, we have a lot of clients that do holiday cards, gift baskets, wine baskets. We have some clients that do Thanksgiving cards or a New Year's Eve email blast to try and separate it out from the rest of the holiday cards. I've had clients even wait until spring training for baseball because they were huge into that and sent out cards then. But I think if you guys are planning on sending something out to your clients, now is the time to figure out that list. Now is the time to get that organized and get everything ordered. You'd be surprised that can take a while when those cards can arrive. So now is the time to really look back at your client list, see if there's just bigger clients you want to give them a certain gift to, other clients just send out cards, and really take a look at that now and see what needs to be done. And I think really the final piece is probably not bookkeeping, but is more admin paralegal side, kind of wrapping things up for you guys. Transactional work can be big at the end of the year. So seeing if there's closings, things like that, and making sure that you have the assistance, the help that you need, especially with holidays coming up, that you have that help that you need, not only from your clients, but if you have staff or whatever it may be, that there's people there to help you wrap up just your day-to-day legal work as well. So that's kind of end of year. Were there any major questions on end of year? Or can we just move to future planning and we'll answer any questions at the end? Brian, do you see anything in the chat?
I'm the one that's controlling the slides here, so I can't see it.
Oh, okay.
So if you have questions, we'll get there at the end.
Yeah. So future planning, again, a lot of this can be repetitive of year end, but things, future planning is really looking back at your practice for the year, things that might have been really frustrating for you, things that you spent a lot of time on that was not necessarily something you should have been spending time on. Now is the time, as we get towards the end of the year, beginning of the year, putting plans in place so that when you hit 2021, it's not all of a sudden May and you still need to put different actions in place. Now is the time to sit back, see what difficulties you ran into for the year and what needs to change. One of the big things that we're really pushing with clients is LawPay, or a similar program to LawPay. So LawPay is a credit card processing company that really specializes for law firms. So they understand the operating and COLTAF account really well. We have all of our clients set up on that. I'm pushing this a little bit more, probably because of how this year went. A lot of us were not in the office, weren't cutting checks, weren't mailing checks, weren't receiving the mail for deposits. And so one of the main things that we were trying to do for clients is really get them on those credit card payments, so that if you're unable to get into the office for any reason, you do have a process in place to collect payments on your monthly billing. I think it's really important to have that system in place, especially with what we ran into in this year. And LawPay is great because they not only have the credit card, but you can also process payment via e-check. So if people have payment that they want out of their own personal business account or whatever it may be, they're able to process payment that way as well. And I like LawPay probably the best because most credit card processing companies don't understand the COLTAF account, and they take the fee out of that account. whereas LawPay will only remove the fee for operating and cold tap payments out of the operating account. So you're never having to worry that you've overpooled the cold tap account for those fees and having to return funds. So if you are looking for a credit card processing system, I think that LawPay is the best way to go. And just something to think about putting into place. I know we try and stay away from credit card payments sometimes because of those fees. It really is kind of the way we're headed though. And with the future, we just don't know what that will hold. So I think it's smart to get something like that in place. I know that a lot of you guys are smaller firms. So sometimes you're doing a lot of that work just in an Excel spreadsheet, Word documents, whatever it may be. I think now is the time really to sit back and think, can I put QuickBooks into action for my bookkeeping? Is there a good billing system that we can use? Am I spending more time manually entering in documents, trying to stay on top of that, where I can put a system into place that will kind of streamline that? If you already have those systems in place and you're thinking maybe it's not the best, or we're wanting to try something different, now's the time to look at different software programs and really get, a software in place. I know sometimes it seems that Excel or Word is just as beneficial, but a lot of these programs do have systems in place that can streamline. And again, at the end of the day, this is about streamlining for you guys, especially since you guys are such small firms. More efficiency is the best way to go. And so a lot of times having a QuickBooks or a Clio billing program, something like that in place can really ease a lot of the time that might be spent on this billing and bookkeeping stuff. If you're not pleased with your programs, again, we're here and can always suggest different options as well for different programs. I think one of the biggest things to pay attention to, especially for small firms, is the amount of time that you guys are spending on that admin paralegal work or that billing and bookkeeping work. I think as solo attorneys, or if you have a couple partners in a firm, it can just be easy to think, I have this down, I can fly through this, I can get through this. No need to hire anybody. But I think it's really, really crucial, if you're not already doing this, is to keep track of your time on what you're spending on the admin paralegal or the billing and bookkeeping time. I think you'll be surprised on how long you are taking to do items like that. And I think it's good to have that right in front of your face to see those actual hours that you're spending on that. And can those hours be spent on legal work at your higher rate, billing out to clients, and that time can then be outsourced or sent to another employee at your firm to handle those types of tasks. I think that's probably the main thing that we've ran into with smaller firms, is analyzing that and seeing how much time is really spent on the admin side of work and how much time can actually be spent on that billable time. So if you're not doing that, I suggest that's something that you implement for 2021, to see, okay, how much time am I spending? Do I need to outsource? Do I need to hire within? And see what you can do on that front. Another thing that's important comes with the cold tap account, but it's retainer funds. So again, these times are beyond uncertain. We don't really know what the future holds. And this just goes for, I think, day-to-day operations as well. I think having retainer funds always available for client work is a really crucial step for your firm, especially if it's a new client you haven't worked with before. I think it's important that you have a threshold. If you're asking always for $1,000 retainer and you're applying that to a monthly bill, the client is always replenishing that retainer back up to that minimum that you have, whether it's 1,000 to 5,000, whatever it may be. It's really important to analyze the the type of work you're doing for a client, how much you think that work is going to take, and requesting a reasonable retainer for that work. And if it continues, it's always having that open communication with clients of, hey, this project is getting a little out of hand. It's coming this way. We need more retainer funds. Again, we're working in a situation where if COVID picks up or whatever it may be, we need to have those funds to apply to bills so that you guys aren't feeling that effect of not getting payments for your monthly bills as well. I say this even if it's a client that you've worked with before that you know very well. I know it might not always be the most fun conversation to say that you need a retainer, but at the end of the day, this is planning for your firm and what needs to be handled. And a lot of times we've ran into situations where those funds aren't available and it can be difficult to get that payment. And as a small firm, you guys really need to rely on those retainer funds and figuring out what's best for your firm, what that minimum might be, and always having your client replenish that retainer.
I've said a number of times to my clients that, you know, I'm a pretty good lawyer, but I suck as a bank. So, you know, I need to have those funds available because I'm not big enough to hold on and become a lender for fees that are due. So it's like Aubree said, sometimes those conversations can get difficult. And I'd be lying if I said that I've done it in 100% of the cases. But even with clients that I've known for a long time, I'd say at least 80 to 90% of my work is done with a retainer in place.
Yeah, I just think it's an important thing for smaller firms and big firms, but I think especially with the small firm, as Brian said, we don't always have that luxury to wait for those payments. And with the future uncertain, we're just not sure. I think it's a great process to put in place. Have that be part of your engagement agreements, that there is this requirement for a retainer. There is the requirement to replenish that retainer so that they're not blindsided and you guys have that in writing. So I think that's crucial to add to your agreements as well. Again, same thing kind of with end of year, but I think prioritizing your accounts receivable is crucial. Not just trying to collect as much as you can at the end of the year. I think if you can put a process in place and stay on top of it regarding that AR, it's really important to try and monthly run that AR report. A lot of programs will have an aging AR report so you can see, okay, this client is 90 plus days past due. We've got to figure out how to collect those funds. Is it a client that's having trouble and you can figure out a payment plan for them? Anything that you can do, again, for your guys' size firm to collect those funds and get that money in the door. You don't want to always wait 6 months down the road after a bill's been sent. That pisses the client off, unfortunately. And they want to know why, you know, in case they didn't receive the bill. Anything can happen. And so we typically for our clients will run a monthly AR report. We'll go through and really try and stay on top of clients via phone, email, give them the option to pay via credit card, whatever it may be, to try and stay on top of those receivables so that's not falling behind. Another thing that we do, which I think is really crucial as well as a lawyer, is to, when you run that monthly AR report, you're also running a monthly trust report, your COLTAF report, to see what clients have funds. We shouldn't be holding on to client funds if the case is done. A lot of us are pretty good if it's a big settlement, you know, you have $1,000 left, here you go. But I think it's really crucial for your firm, not only when you're running the AR, to run a trust report and see what's outstanding. Can we return those funds back to the client? Oh, that client's running low on funds. We need to replenish those retainers. I think that's a process that should just be a normal monthly step. When running AR, you're looking at those trust funds as well and returning anything that should not be there any longer, so that those clients can have those funds back as well. So those are kind of two big reports that I like to run when it comes, you know, to monthly bookkeeping. And then, you know, it's just embracing that technology, embracing that outsourcing, especially as small firms. This really kind of jumps back to the part of keeping track of your admin time, keeping track of the time it's taking you to do billing and bookkeeping work. It's going to be really important for you to analyze those numbers and see, I'm spending 15 hours a month doing admin work. Well, can that work be outsourced to a paralegal, to an admin? And I can be then billing and getting out there and getting new business for the firm. It's not always fun. I think a lot of us think, okay, we can do it, which you can. You can do the paralegal work. You know how to do the admin work, but is that beneficial to the growth of your firm? And so really keeping track of that time and really seeing, can I outsource this? Can I use a billing software? Can I use a bookkeeping software to streamline processes? And every firm is different, but I think it's really important to pay attention as a small firm, as a solo attorney, to what time you're spending on this type of work and what can be outsourced, and then what you guys can spend your time on when it comes to actual legal work. I think that's a huge, huge step when it comes to your future planning. I think that's it. Are there questions on end of year, future planning?
That went away. Hang on just a second. Let me see if I can get to the back to me. I'll try to unshare and get to questions. There's chat and LawPay services. There's a discount, it looks like. You guys, I don't know what the controls are set at, but if you guys have questions, feel free to either use the chat function or just unmute yourself and ask away.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Miles.
As far as software, do you just generally recommend QuickBooks?
Yeah, for the bookkeeping, unfortunately, they have kind of monopolized the system, but they really are probably one of the best. I suggest using QuickBooks Online. There's a monthly, fee with that, but you have your continual updates that happen with the online. If you do desktop, I think it's close to 200 for the program, but every year you have to upgrade that. So you're spending that. Normally, I think the price you can get like 6 months for $50 off. And I think it's like 70 a month. And then if you do the 6 months, so it's like 30 to 40. But I think it's one of the best. It's not
Xero is also out there,
and Xero is also out there. But I think QuickBooks really is probably one of the best. And then billing software, there are a lot of programs that combine billing and bookkeeping software together. Those can be higher in cost. So if you're looking for billing software as well, I think Clio is a great one that you can use, or there's some other ones that are really manageable, not too high in price for a solo attorney. That'll just help kind of streamline, get your time entered, things like that. But on bookkeeping, I do think that QuickBooks is probably your best option on that.
Awesome. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, this is Jim Pinto. I had a question on LawPay. So what can you generally describe how LawPay works, and then what is the LawBank discount and how do we take advantage of that?
Yes. So when you call, they're really easy to work with. They're really great. They will help walk you through the process. It can take maybe 2 days to set up, and then they'll apply any discount codes on that front end. What happens is after you get it set up, you can set up your operating and your Coltaf account. So if you want to request a retainer via credit card, you get a link. So you can send that directly to your clients. It's just a normal like LawPay website link. It'll go to a LawPay page, and that is set up to deposit into your operating or Coltaf account. And on that page, you can have your logo. You can set up the page however you want it to look. It's just a basic page where they put in the amount they're paying. They have a reference, if there's an invoice number, and then they just fill out their information, credit card, their name, everything like that. And then those funds directly just go into your operating and COLTAF account. Usually takes a couple days for those to go in there. And then you have a login as well to LawPay, so you can go in and process credit card payments directly for your clients if they're having trouble with the link. It's the same exact page. You're just going in, entering in, you know, a credit card information, address, name, things like that. You can return funds if you need to. So say you requested a $5,000 retainer and you only ended up using $2,000. You can actually refund that remaining balance through LawPay back to their credit card. So that's a nice feature to have. Same with, you know, the ACH, they can use their bank account to pay on there as well.
Jim, just to jump in, this is Miranda. So LawPay members, we just received the contract actually this week today from LawPay, but LawBank members are available to purchase a plan through LawPay for $20 a month or $180 per year. You would pay 1.95% plus 20 cents per transaction. So it's super cheap to do it, and everything that Aubree is suggesting about the ease of making payments into your operating account or your trust account, it truly is one of the easiest ways to kind of clean that up. So I'm going to add that information into the member resources, but let me know if you have any questions.
Yeah. So do I contact you, Miranda, to sign up, or do I contact LawPay?
I think at this point, if you're okay with it, let me just introduce you to them. And
Sure.
I think that would be probably the easiest way to
Okay.
ensure, so they know you're part of the community.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah,
Appreciate
no
it.
problem.
Yeah, and thank you, Brian and Aubree. This has been really helpful.
Definitely. Yeah.
You bet, Jim.
Other questions? Okay. I know it can be a lot, but was there a question?
No, that was just me going, all right.
Okay. I know it's a lot, but you know, now really is the time to sit back. If you can think about it this weekend, see where you're at with end of year, see where frustrations may have been, you know, for this year, things that can change for the future. I think now's the time to do that because again, we all know it. Holidays happen, family comes into town, then all of a sudden it's a new year and we're, you know, kind of redoing things that we want to change. So now is really the time to sit back, see what has worked well, see what may need to change, and try and do that ahead of time so you're really prepared for 2021 and get together with that. So. Okay. I mean, if there's questions, like Brian said, we are at the LawBank location off of Mexico. So we're just on the 8th floor. And I think Miranda will give you guys our contact. So if there is any questions you guys have, just let us know and we're happy to answer anything further. Okay.
Super helpful, Brian and Aubree. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Of course.
You bet.
Thank you guys for your time.